Hey guys, my name is Max Jacobson. You're watching Lions Fantasy Sports. Today we're going over some reactions to Week 7 of this NFL season, some sell highs, some buy lows, and some waiver wire pickups to help you dominate your league moving forward. At the very end of the video, we're going to go over some Monday Night Football takeaways and what I thought of the game. The first player we're going over this week is Jamar Chase, who's been an absolute monster this year. Right now, he's the wide receiver 3 in PPR formats. He's the wide receiver 2 in half PPR and standard. And honestly, this might be one of the most dominant rookie seasons we've seen from a wide receiver ever. He's a top 5 wide receiver moving forward, and he's even better than peak Justin Jefferson last year. He should be a consensus Dynasty top 5 wide receiver, and honestly, he has an argument for the wide receiver 1 overall in Dynasty. The second player we're talking about is Kyle Pitts, who honestly isn't surprising anybody. We all knew he was a generational talent going into this year, but right now he is officially a top 5 tight end moving forward. Over his last 2 games, he has 16 receptions for 288 yards and 1 touchdown. He's averaging 25.1 fantasy points over his last 2 weeks, which is first in the NFL, and I don't see that production changing at all. We saw Matt Ryan use him as a safe blanket down the stretch and throughout the entire game. Kyle Pitts also had this clip. And honestly, this one-handed catch truly does show how much of a generation talent he really is at the tight end position. The third player we're talking about is one that hurts. And honestly, I don't think anybody saw this coming. People were telling me that this guy was going to be the wide receiver 1 overall this year in PPR. And right now, he's the wide receiver 41 7 weeks in. I think it's time to panic on Calvin Ridley. He had 10 targets in week 7, but only turned that into 28 yards. He had less yards than Hayden Hurst, who had 35, and Russell Gage, who had 68 yards and a touchdown. If I could figure out a way to get rid of Calvin Ridley with the rise of Kyle Pitts and Cordarrelle Patterson, I'd do it. And if you can manage to get a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, CD Lamb, and some sort of package deal when you're sending Calvin Ridley, you need to do everything you can to get this guy off your team. The fourth player we're talking about is somebody that had huge expectations going into this season, but honestly has fallen really short of them, except for the last 2 weeks, and that's A.J. Brown. He's been nothing but phenomenal over the last 2 weeks. He's actually the wide receiver 4 in PPR over that time span, averaging a little over 21.7 PPR fantasy points a week. He's coming off an insane week against the Chiefs, but I'm not quite buying the hype just yet. He had 8 receptions for 133 yards and a touchdown against this awful Chiefs defense. And honestly, I think it might have been somewhat of a fluke game. The Titans have been one of, if not the worst defense in the entire NFL, outside of the Chiefs, that is. And they forced 4 turnovers against the Chiefs this past Sunday, which led to a lot of positive game script for A.J. Brown this week. With Derrick Henry surely getting more of an increased workload in these coming weeks, and Julio Jones returning, I think we might have just seen A.J. Brown's peak game of the entire year. If you can sell high, I would. The fifth player we're talking about is somebody that I had no faith in going into this season. It's Tua. And honestly, he looked pretty good this week, and I think all of the trade rumors surrounding him and Deshaun Watson, and potentially the Houston making a big trade with the Dolphins, lit a fire in him this week. He had 291 passing yards for 4 touchdowns in week 7, and since he came back from his injury, he's actually the QB3 overall. It's only been 2 weeks, so he might be firing the gun a little bit early here, but he's averaging 25.5 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks, which is more than Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, and Tom Brady in that time span. He's a viable starter, and if he's on your waivers, you should grab him. The next player I want to talk about has just been a huge disappointment, and honestly, I feel for all Chicago fans because Matt Nagy and Justin Fields have been awful. Justin Fields might be the worst quarterback in the entire NFL, and this entire Bears offense, outside of whoever their running back is for the week, has 0 fantasy relevance. Whether it's Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson, which pains me to say because I drafted him in a lot of leagues, and even Justin Fields, they have no fantasy relevance for the rest of the year. Matt Nagy has no idea how to drop a play for a mobile quarterback or use any sort of play action to get their star wide receiver involved. And honestly, unless Allen Robinson is traded before the deadline, I don't really see him doing much the rest of the year either, and he might be droppable. Robinson should be considered a wide receiver 3 moving forward, and Justin Fields is officially droppable in all of your leagues. He's averaging 8.8 fantasy points a game since he started getting the quarterback 1 role in this offense, and he's also the QB 30 since getting that role as well. Justin Fields is definitely droppable. Now we're going to move on to a portion that we're going to talk about sell highs and players that you should capitalize on their value being at the peak of what it possibly could be. The first player we're talking about is Mike Evans, who's coming off a 3-touchdown performance this past Sunday, where he caught Tom Brady's 600th touchdown, which is an NFL record. Mike Evans has honestly been great this year and has outweighed all of our expectations, for the most part, that is. But with Antonio Brown and Robert Gronkowski returning soon, his value is at its current peak and it's only going to go downhill from here. If you can trade him for a player like Justin Jefferson or Stephon Diggs, someone who's more consistent and a wide receiver one in their offense that has no one to compete with targets for them, I would do it. The second player I'm selling high on is someone who's actually been solid off waivers this year, and it's Elijah Mitchell. Now, along with every other 49ers running back, this running back core just can't stay healthy, and that's just the reality of it. It sucks to say, but he's been a stable, consistent RB2 when he has played. He's coming off an RB5 performance in Week 7 where he had 100 yards and a touchdown. If you can trade him for someone more consistent or somehow package him in a deal for someone who's been playing poorly like Aaron Jones, or even get a guy like Darrell Henderson in some way, you need to capitalize on that and sell this guy while he still has some value. The next player that we're selling high on is someone that surprised me in a lot of ways, and it's Mike Gesicki. Right now, he's the tight end 3 in PPR formats, and nobody saw this coming. Let's be real, okay? Let's be real for 1 second. There's not a single fantasy analyst out there that thought that Mike Gesicki would be the tight end 3 7 weeks in. Especially with a season where we have George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, all players who we saw breakout years coming. Nobody thought that Mike Gesicki would be the player that he is right now. From weeks 1 through 4, though, he was the tight end 11. He was very inconsistent and wasn't very good. From weeks 4 through 7, though, he's been the tight end 2. So he's definitely been picking up over the last couple weeks, but I'd only sell him right now if you can get some consistent or elite player for him. Examples of trades that I want to do for Mike Gesicki right now would be trading him for Darren Waller, trading him for Kyle Pitts, trading him for any RB1 in a package, of course, or an RB2, trading him for any wide receiver 1 in a package, of course, or any wide receiver 2. If you can capitalize on a player like Mike Gesicki, who's been extremely inconsistent his entire career, and get some consistent elite value, you need to do it while his value is still high. Now we're going to move on to some buy lows. The first player I want to bring up is Darrell Henderson Jr., who's been one of the most consistent backs in all of fantasy this year. Playing on a top 5 offense behind a top 5 O-line, coming off a subpar week against the Lions. If you can somehow trade some trash for this guy, or package a deal where you trade someone like Kenneth Gainwell or Khalil Herbert and get him who's more consistent, go ahead and do it. The second player we're going to buy low on is DJ Moore. And I'll be the first one to admit it, I was not a big fan of DJ Moore going into this season. I didn't think Sam Darnold could throw the ball whatsoever. And over the last 2 weeks, it's looked that way. Let's be very clear. It's looked bad for these Panthers. But some things are looking up in the future. One of which being they might trade for Deshaun Watson, which would obviously vault DJ Moore into a potential wide receiver 1 overall from that point on. Now, with Christian McCaffrey coming back, DJ Moore will immediately get better. And we saw this offense was actually very phenomenal with Christian McCaffrey lining up behind Sam Darnold. DJ Moore is still the wide receiver 8 overall in PPR formats, and he's going to pick it up. So if you can buy low on him, do it now. The third player we're going to buy low on, which sounds crazy that we're buying low on a top 10 running back, is Aaron Jones. He's been a top 5 back in PPR formats each of the last 2 years, guys. I know he's been inconsistent this year, but he plays in a top 5 offense with a great line that's missing David Bakhtiari, who's coming back soon, and A.J. Dillon is no longer a worry because clearly he's not that good, guys. If you can buy low on a guy who's been top 5 each of the last 2 years and trade someone like Darrell Henderson, or maybe a Chris Carson plus a wide receiver, or a Clyde Edwards-Helaire for him who's coming back from IR soon, then go ahead and get Aaron Jones for a cheap price because he's still a top 10 back at minimum, and he has top 5 upside. Our fourth player in our buy low isn't even necessarily a buy low. It's Mark Andrews. He's the tight end 2 in PPR formats so far this year, and honestly, I don't see him slowing down. He's coming off a week where he only had 9 points in a blowout loss to the Cincinnati Bengals, and if for some reason the person who has Mark Andrews in your league is taking offers, shoot him one, because his value is probably lower than what it should be right now. Our fifth player in our buy low of this week is Kadarius Toney. And honestly, this guy does it all. He really does. He's an elite yards after the catch receiver, and he's an elite receiver in general in terms of this rookie class. Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay, and Saquon Barkley are all still experiencing injuries, and if he can come back this week and step into that wide receiver 1 role, I see no reason why he won't outperform the value that you would pay for him right now. All right, guys, we're going to move on to our waiver wire pickups of the week. The number 1 waiver wire in all of your leagues this week should be Kenneth Gainwell. Miles Sanders was carted off with an ankle injury early versus the Raiders this past Sunday, and Kenneth Gainwell is the next man up. And we've already seen him produce. Gainwell actually has more targets than Antonio Gibson this season with 23, and we've seen him have multiple games this year with over 5 receptions, like in Week 4 versus Kansas City. If Miles Sanders misses significant time, Kenneth Gainwell should easily be the #1 waiver wire ad in all of your leagues, and if you pick him up, you can expect a solid production and a nice little player that you can put in on bye weeks for your RB1 or RB2. The second player that I love this week on waivers is Rashad Bateman. I love this kid coming out of the draft this year. When I found out he went to an offense that didn't really have a wide receiver one in Marquise Brown, I loved him. Now, he experienced an injury early this year, was placed on IR, but since he's come back, he hasn't been that great. Last week, he looked explosive, though, against the Bengals. He had 3 receptions for 80 yards, and honestly, if he's on your waivers in your deeper league, he's worth the pickup because he just could be a high-end wide receiver 3 moving forward. The next player in our waiver wire pickups is Taylor Heineke, quarterback from the Washington football team. Right now, he is the QB 15 overall in fantasy football, and with bye weeks coming up of Lamar Jackson on this week, Derek Carr this week on bye as well, and then you have the Rams and Cardinals in the next couple weeks being on bye, Taylor Heineke can fill a role in your team and get you 20-plus fantasy points. We saw him rush for almost 100 yards this past Sunday versus the Packers, and he can do it again. He's definitely a mobile quarterback, and he's going to be solid for your team if you need him on a bye week. The fourth player we're picking up this week on waivers is CJ Uzomah, who honestly has come out of left field. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I didn't even know who this guy was going into the season. And I think a lot of you probably are going to say the same thing. He's currently the tight end 11 in PPR formats, and he's the only tight end in fantasy football that has multiple weeks of being the tight end 1 overall for that week. He's one of Joe Burrow's favorite targets, and we saw him break loose for an impressive touchdown this week against Marlon Humphrey, who got absolutely torched by this Bengals offense. The final waiver wire pickup of the week for this video is Deshaun Watson. Now, we don't have much clarity on whether or not Deshaun Watson will play at all this season, but if he does, and he does get traded to a team like the Panthers or the Miami Dolphins, he's immediately a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. From weeks 5 to 17 last year, he was the QB1 overall in fantasy, and we know he's an amazing talent and he's going to put up numbers. Not only is he a dual threat, but he can throw for 400 yards a game and 4 touchdowns. If this guy's on your waivers and you can drop somebody pointless on your team that isn't doing anything for you, the upside is worth it because he truly is a league winner if he plays. All right, guys, for our final segment of this video, we're going to talk about Monday Night Football takeaways. Honestly, there's not much here. It was one of the more boring games of the year, but I will say this. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are no longer top 10 fantasy football wide receivers. That might be somewhat of a hot take, but they only combined for 8 targets this entire game. And it's clear that Geno Smith is not going to be like most backups. He's not just going to feed his best player, which is tough. But the only reason the DK Metcalf's night was saved at all was because of an 84-yard touchdown in broken coverage. As for Alvin Kamara, he's still a top 8 running back moving forward. Despite having somewhat of a subpar season this far, he showed us just truly how elite he really is this game. Obviously, he's a must start, but Alvin Kamara owners should feel good about their RB1 moving forward. Whether you bought him low after a couple games in this season or you drafted him with a top 5 pick, the value is still there and you're getting that out of him. That's going to do it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in up until this point. Make sure you subscribe, drop a like, and again, comment questions for us to answer because we just might answer them in our next video. Have a good week, guys, and I hope you win your fantasy football matchups.